Okay, welcome back to the Inhabit podcast. I would say we are celebrating a win. Did you see that the FDA has banned red dye?
I saw that. Red 3, but
Red
not
3.
40 yet, right?
Yeah, I think it's just red 3, but a step in the right direction. Lots of advocacy has led to this point.
Yeah.
Lots of groundwork. So hopefully, as we change to the new administration in the next week, the ball will just keep rolling with these types of wins for like food safety.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what happens. Wow, that's so soon. I didn't realize it's already in 5 days.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. And things that, like, good things are already happening. So
Yeah.
I'm feeling optimistic about where we're going. Hopefully, so our topic today, hopefully we see some similar shifts in policy around this topic. We're going to talk about Ozempic today. And this topic came up for us. I sent you a story a couple weeks ago on Instagram of somebody that I follow, and I'm not even sure who it was. I tried to go back to see the story, but it was already gone. But she had just posted in her stories about how they were mourning the loss of her mother-in-law from complications of Ozempic. And I was like, that's pretty wild. Like, you're not hearing like too many people, well, at least they're not publicizing any deaths that are coming from Ozempic. So I was really curious to look into more of the side effects, because we've talked about this before, I think in our RFK episode, where we're talking about how they are talking about approving it for younger and younger children through like the Medicare program. And it's just like kind of a scary thought to think about. So I thought for us to kind of delve into the mechanics of Ozempic and the potential side effects and just kind of that whole cascade would be interesting today.
Yeah. I feel like the thing about health trends like Ozempic or even carnivore diet, anything health related that gets publicized, I always want people to know how it works. That's always my number one question too when women come to me about, should I go off birth control? Should I go on birth control? If they're already on birth control and they want to know, should I come off? My first question is always, do you know how it works? Do you know what's happening in your body? And I've never had anyone say yes. It's usually no. And even with the carnivore diet, I have known friends who've done it. But in the same vein, they're also talking about how every night they're doing carnivore, but then every day they're also having this sugary drink or this. And if you're doing that, and then they tell me I stopped doing it, it wasn't making a difference. Well, the purpose of carnivore is to become fat adapted. So like if you're still eating carbs and sugar, it's not going to work for you. And that's with any medication. That's what being like informed and having informed consensus with medication is. But a lot of people just take things on the recommendation of their doctor and they don't know what it is. We had someone in our program recently who mentioned that they had taken Ozempic. My first question was, do you know how Ozempic works? And of course their answer was no, I would love to know. So we talked about it. And so for anyone listening who doesn't know how Ozempic works, so Ozempic is traditionally prescribed to people with type 2 diabetes. It mimics our natural hormone, the GLP-1. So it is a GLP-1 mimicking medication. There's multiple of these out there. It's not just Ozempic. But GLP-1 is a hormone that our bodies create in the small intestine as a response to eating, and specifically eating like glucose. So it triggers insulin to help drive any glucose in the blood into your cells, and it suppresses glucagon and helps lower your blood sugar, slow your digestion, and reduce your appetite. So a lot of people with Ozempic report like they can't even look at food, no appetite. It's really suppressive to your appetite. And that is because your body is getting the signal that it's satisfied and it's full and it doesn't want any more food. And it doesn't actually create GLP-1 in our bodies. It doesn't create the natural hormone that our bodies make. Instead, it uses a drug called semaglutide, which mimics the GLP-1 and then creates the cascade of events that the GLP-1 hormone would create in our body naturally. The problem with this, or the consideration with this, I should say, is that it does not address any kind of root cause of type 2 diabetes, which we know is caused by certain diets, usually high in carbohydrates, sedentary lifestyles, things like chronic stress, nervous system dysregulation, gut health imbalance, inflammation, all of these things. They're not actually getting addressed with this. It also creates somewhat of a dependence on the medication because your body's relying on that semaglutide drug to create the cascade of events when you eat. So you're not, my assumption is you wouldn't be producing your own GLP-1 hormone without it.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder how your body would adapt over time to never really needing that.
Yeah, and that's something we were talking about the other day, is because we've been hearing a good number of experts that are either maybe in more of the holistic health field or maybe like straddling holistic health and Western medicine, saying they see it as a beneficial drug because it can get people started on their journey, so they can use it as a tool. But if you aren't addressing those underlying issues, you're making somebody dependent on this drug, and they're not going to be able to stop taking the drug and continue to see results. So you kind of are stuck between a rock and a hard place at that point.
Right. Yeah. I see both ways though. I do see how like therapeutically it could be helpful, but in the short term and in small doses to kind of get the ball rolling, like you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we can't help but question the dependence that it creates for your body.
Right. And then there are like there are side effects that I think it's worth noting, because I know now like Ozempic has become so popular because it's not just people with type 2 diabetes that are getting prescribed this drug. There's people with all different kinds of, health concerns or weight goals that are trying to get prescribed this drug. And I think that that's why it was a bit controversial. I guess that was earlier last year, because people are saying, well, it's not available to people with type 2 diabetes if all of these other people are trying to take this drug. But when I started looking into the side effects, because I was really curious after I saw that somebody had passed away due to complications of it, a big thing, and there's actually a class action lawsuit right now, is gastroparesis. And you mentioned that the way the drug works is it slows down digestion. Gastroparesis is basically stomach paralyzation, where you just can, like, your stomach is not working. It's not passing food through your digestive system. So you just feel full all of the time, and you can't eat without throwing up or immediately having to go to the bathroom. And the drug makers kind of deny that this is a side effect, but clearly people that are taking the drug are experiencing this as a side effect. And some of it is like very severe. Some people are having really lasting effects even after they stop taking the drug. And that's why there is this class action lawsuit taking place right now. And I think that just kind of takes us back to the informed consent piece, because people hear about this as like this trendy way to lose weight, but then is your doctor telling you about the risk of gastroparesis or even the risk of thyroid tumors? That is a huge one. There's a lot of serious concerns related to this drug.
What's in the inserts? Like, what is the side effects of it?
So the warnings and precautions include a risk of thyroid C-cell tumors, pancreatitis. That is actually a really common one from the research that I was doing. Acute and chronic pancreatitis has been reported in clinical studies. Diabetic retinopathy complications. So this is people with type 2 diabetes that have a high cardiovascular risk. Never share an Ozempic pen between patients. That's in the insert. Hypoglycemia, acute kidney injury, hypersensitivity reactions like anaphylaxis, acute gallbladder disease, and pulmonary aspiration during general anesthesia, which that's actually a really scary one that I was also reading about because, you know, if you're going in for a procedure and you're going under anesthesia, you're not supposed to eat like the day before, right? Because there's a risk of aspiration. But these people that are having this really slow digestion or potentially even gastroparesis, even if they're not eating, they might still have food in their stomach. So they go under, and there is the risk for them to aspirate and potentially choke to death while they're under for a procedure. So, yeah. And then the most common adverse reactions include nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal pain, and constipation.
That actually reminds me when you were going through the inserts about sharing pens. In case anyone is not aware, Ozempic is taken through injection. So I actually didn't realize that until I was doing some research for this podcast. But you inject it either into like your abdomen, your thigh, where else? Stomach, thigh, arm. I didn't realize that. I thought Ozempic was a pill. But
yeah, no, I guess that's what makes it so much more
effective,
appealing, is because it's just a once a week thing. Like we were talking to a client that in the past had chosen Ozempic over metformin because that was something she had to take daily and wasn't actually seeing huge results with. And then, you know, Ozempic is like, oh, it's kind of like a miracle drug. You only have to take it once a week and it's going to offer you all of these great benefits. But then if you have informed consent, if your doctor is actually taking you through all of these complications, possible complications, you might think twice.
Sure. And I think it's important to say, like, if you weigh the risks and benefits and you feel like for you personally, it's a great decision, then that's your autonomy. I think the thing that I always want to hit home with is I just want people to understand how it works with their body. And a lot of people aren't health literate. And I think that's kind of intentional because it separates like doctors from us, and like doctors are health literate. So they get to tell us about what's best for our bodies. And I think that people need to take more agency over understanding what they're putting in their body and how it works. It might take a little bit of like educating yourself and research and all of these things. And I saw a post today that was about how if someone was going to buy a house or a car or make a big purchase, like you would praise them or think highly of them for doing their research for this big purchase that they're going to make. But when people do the research on something they're going to put into their bodies, there's a negative reaction from the general public of being a conspiracy theorist or like, you know, too cautious. Yes. And that's just really insane. And especially because Ozempic is a purchase. Not only is there a part of it that's going in your body, there's also a hefty price tag to Ozempic. Ozempic was $4.6 billion for Medicare in 2022. Huge.
That's a big number.
And I know Callie Means has talked about this before and thrown around ideas of different ways we could use this money, but there's $1,200 plus that go toward Ozempic monthly from Medicare.
And that's per person, right?
Yeah, per person. So like Callie Means has brought up ideas of like, what else could we do with that $1,200 instead to address the root cause of lifestyle, diet, get them a gym membership, get them more time somehow to use their gym membership, get them whole foods that they can eat, and education around how to best eat for their body, and using that money in a way that actually gets to the root of the problem and addresses the underlying issues.
Yes. $1,200, you could buy like a quarter or a half of a cow for that much money, you know, and that's going to last you way longer than a month. You sent me a reel earlier of someone speaking about the definite research that reducing carb intake and upping protein intake is just better for health outcomes and for reducing diabetes and all of these lifestyle metabolic diseases.
You would be floored when you actually look into the research on ketogenic diets and the number of common issues that people have in America that are cured in a short amount of time through ketogenic diets. It's really, really mind-boggling. PCOS, like she mentioned in the video, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, lots of mood disorders, obviously type 2 diabetes, and all of these things come with a host of different, comorbidities that people experience. And there is research, there is science that shows that low carb diets can improve outcomes within weeks.
Yeah, it's so crazy.
Well, let's talk about how FDA has approved Ozempic for kids as young as 10 years old. 10 years old.
So young.
So young. So not even through puberty yet. So messing with their hormones. So dependent on this drug for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
As a result.
That's when they should be learning how to eat well. Not that like you can just eat all the junk food and then take an Ozempic injection.
Right. And I saw the one article about this 12-year-old girl whose mother had always struggled with weight, and she went on Ozempic and she lost a bunch of weight. She felt really great. And then she perceived that her 12-year-old daughter had a weight problem and was going down a similar path. So her and the doctors decided that Ozempic would be a great fit for her. They put this 12-year-old girl on Ozempic, and the article was very much like shaping it as a win. It was a celebration that this 12-year-old girl went on Ozempic and it worked and she lost weight. But there's no follow-up on the fact that she's going to be dependent on that for the rest of her life, likely. Because we just I don't know that we have long-term research on how that will carry out from childhood to adulthood, taking Ozempic, because you are messing with so much of their hormonal balance, and I don't even know what else. I mean, that's the one that sticks out to me the most because everything about it is hormonal, but
well, the thing that's concerning there too is like you're slowing digestion. You're not teaching these children how to eat a balanced diet of like prioritizing protein. So it kind of stands to reason that they're still sticking with whatever the same diet is that led them to be overweight in the first place. And then there's the fact that most people see a pretty equal proportion of fat and muscle loss in this. So you're not like building a healthy like body composition. So to start that so young, like where does that lead you 10, 15 years down the road?
Well, we'll find out in 10 and 15 years when these kids who are on Ozempic have been on it for that long.
Yeah. Well, and I see like a huge problem, and hopefully this is something that is going to be overhauled very soon. But the food pyramid, if you think back to like what we were just saying about how low carb diets have been proven to have really great effects on these metabolic health disorders, but we have a food pyramid that places carbohydrates at the bottom. I'm correct in that, right? I don't even reference this because it's such a BS tool. But if you're eating a bulk of carbohydrates, and that's really because of these mega food corporations, lobbyists, when you're talking about the keto diet, I was thinking about how for a long time, I really didn't think the keto diet was a good way to go because I saw so many people doing like dirty keto where like you're following the guidelines, but there are so many processed and packaged foods on the market that fit into the keto standards. And so then you're able to like eat that way, and you might like achieve a short-term result, like things might start to improve a little bit, but you're still eating all these processed packaged foods. And so like long-term, you're not really feeling that great. You just maybe lost a little bit of weight at first.
Right. Yeah, and with the ketogenic diet, the purpose of it is to really become fat adapted so that your body is using fat for fuel instead of the carbohydrates. And our culture stuffs ourselves full of carbohydrates all day, every day. And so our body is just, the glucose is constantly running in our bloodstream. And that's why we see so many blood sugar problems like type 2 diabetes. When we eat and when we're fat adapted, our body uses fat for fuel and it doesn't actually require any carbohydrates. There's a ton of essential nutrients and essential fatty acids, and there is so much essential things that in fat that our bodies can't actually make themselves. We need to eat fat, and our brain is 60% fat. There's so much of it now that I'm kind of following a ketogenic diet that makes sense to me, especially knowing that, our ancestors for all of time, they ate so much fat through meat, through farming and hunting. And now we have just a plethora and abundance of processed foods and breads, and we are carb overloaded for sure. And we never need to use fat for fuel because we're never in a state where we don't have constant carbs and glucose in our bloodstream.
Well, and plus all of those healthy, like especially animal fats, have been so demonized for so long.
Have you seen the Swiss food pyramid that came out? I think it came out in
No,
2024. Very recently, I saw a post about it. Zero animal meat on it. Zero.
really?
It's water, tea, and coffee is the base. And then fruits and vegetables, and then bread and grains. And then it's like a little bit of dairy, nuts, seeds. And then at the top, it's like seed oils and chocolate at the top.
Non-caloric beverages, fruits and vegetables, cereal products and potatoes, milk, yogurt and cheese, meat, fish, eggs, and tofu, 1.5 portions per day. Added vegetable oils and added animal fats. They had to keep the vegetable oils in there.
Mm-hmm. Zero animals.
Wow.
Yeah. Very
Yeah,
little protein.
they think you should have one portion of meat, fish, eggs, or tofu. That's the daily guideline. One portion.
Shoot for like one meal of red meat a day.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm having my period, I up that to 2 meals a day. And I have seen, red meat is the most nutrient dense food on the planet, along with I think sardines, certain fish. And there's nothing that contains more nutrients that nature gave us than meat, and specifically like red meat and fish. So it's just really amazing to see these things and know that they're recommending we don't eat it.
Yeah. Well, and it kind of all just feeds into this dysmorphic view of how we should be eating. I've talked about this before, but like before I delved really into holistic health and healing my gut, I ate as little animal protein as possible because it was really hard for me to digest. I felt like that, like it just didn't work for my body. That's, I thought that it wasn't good for me. I thought maybe it was like a little bit of an individual thing because I knew my boyfriend could eat it all day, every day if he wanted to. But I was like, no. I would like wake up in the middle of the night, like flushed with heat and my stomach gurgling if I had a steak for dinner. And then, you do some work on your gut health and realize that like your microbiome was totally out of whack and you're maybe a little bit insulin resistant, and you start to work on those things. And it's like, oh my gosh, I could eat this every day. And I do eat red meat pretty much every day because it makes you feel so much better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had a vegan phase where I was also just thought like meat and I don't agree.
Mm-hmm.
And along with that, I do think it's important that we source the meat properly, not just for our own health, but like I know a lot of vegans care a lot about the animal welfare, and I think that's a very noble cause, and I think we all should care about the welfare of animals, even if we intend to eat them.
Mm-hmm.
They still deserve, in my opinion, to live a good, full, beautiful life with their families. And I think as humans, we have a responsibility to give them that life and give them a life in the sun, outside, in their natural habitat. I don't think that just because we're going to eat them, they should be like put on a conveyor belt alive and come out a hamburger. We've totally taken our power over animals and abused it.
Yeah, we've definitely lost the plot when it comes to the right way to consume animal proteins. Yeah, factory farming is just such, like, I read the book Skinny Bitch when I was like 18, and it's vegan propaganda. It's like goes into all of like the factory dairy farming and factory farming for meat products and stuff, and it's repulsive. It
It's
really
really
makes you
sad.
not want to eat it. I totally 100% get it. But the fact is, like, if you ate, I think I saw this statistic earlier today, if you ate a burger or a steak every day for a year, you still would not have consumed a whole cow. Like,
Right.
there's so much meat that comes from one cow. It's just about getting back to these regenerative farming practices, which, like, we've gone so far down the wrong path with factory farming that, and our population has expanded so much that this, like, we've really got ourselves in a predicament right now. And there are really great farmers out there advocating for regenerative farming, but it's going to take a lot more farmers to get on board for everybody to be able to eat this way. But I always say this, like, we vote with our dollars. You have to be intentional about where you're spending your money. And to your point, I think that was also another reason that I was kind of repulsed by eating meat, because sometimes the stuff you get at the grocery store can be like nasty. Like, if you get some slimy chicken breast, you're like, no, thank you. Or like some really brown beef, you're like, ugh, no. Or, it's just like kind of funky and off-putting. And the more that I've put intention behind sourcing quality meat, the more I can taste the difference. I accidentally got a butcher box delivered. I've been, the past like more than 6 months, I've been getting beef from a local ranch, and then Jordan got a buck, so we've been eating a lot of venison. And I had forgot that I put my butcher box on hold. I thought I had canceled it, and the box showed up. And so we've been eating some of that. First of all, the quality has gone downhill. A bunch of the packaging was ripped, exposed to air, which was really annoying. But then, like, it's decent beef. I think they source their beef from Australia, but it's not as good as the stuff I've been getting locally. It just doesn't taste as good.
Yeah, when I started buying local, something that really surprised me too was how long it lasts. I
Mm-hmm.
could buy from my local co-op by me today on like the 15th, and it would be good for another month. It'd be like freeze by a month from now. And
Mm-hmm.
I was shocked because you always heard like you have 2 days when you
Mm-hmm.
buy your meat, but it's because when you're buying locally raised meat that is so fresh, and it doesn't, we've cut out a lot of the middlemen. Like your
Mm-hmm.
butcher box meat is going from Australia all the way to the United States, all the way to butcher box, all the way to their shipping facility to you. You have 2 days.
Um, yeah, well, and it's interesting too, like when you start to seek out these local sources, like at first you think, oh, this is like, it seems cost prohibitive. It seems like you won't be able to afford something like that. But, when I go into their farm store, like I usually buy like a bundle box that has a bunch of different stuff in it, but they've got their freezers with like single cuts that you can get. And I can get like cubed eye of round steaks. They're like $4 for two. You don't have to eat a fillet every day. There are great and cheap ways to eat red meat every day that are not having like a steak or a ribeye.
Yeah.
Well, those are great. Love them. If you're on a budget, you can still have ground beef. You can get those like maybe less desirable cuts and just be creative with the way that you cook them.
Yeah. It's great advice. And I think just to leave everyone with some like tangible action steps, like if you're thinking about using Ozempic to control your blood sugar or reverse your insulin resistance to, help you lose weight, or you're curious about a ketogenic diet, or have other health issues and you're looking to medications, my advice would be to just know what you're putting in your body. And if you're curious about a ketogenic diet or a carnivore diet, like I said, I had friends who came to me and they were like, the carnivore diet's not working for me, but they were eating a lot of meat, but they weren't not eating carbs, which is the point. And so clearly what I saw was like, you're doing something that you saw someone else do, but you're not understanding it for yourself. And I understand that not everyone is going to go into deep depth of research the way that you and I do, but that's also why, like, come meet with us. Like, we will do the research for you because we consider that our jobs. And we will help you walk through the why and understand it for yourself and gain the health literacy so that you know how to make an informed decision. That's what I want to leave people with. And I think that that's like our superpower too, is that we do like to research and we do like to know the why. And so if you're, on the fence about doing Ozempic or taking Ozempic or doing a ketogenic diet, there's anything you want to reverse and you want to understand it, but you're like, I have jobs, kids, whatever, like, come meet with us and we'll help you try and understand your situation so that you can make an informed decision that works for you.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power, and we want to put it into your hands because it makes your life easier when you're able to advocate for yourself.
Absolutely.
Cool.